You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram.
Good day, my name's Mike Whitney. I played for the Randwick Cricket Club in Sydney and got to play for New South Wales in the Sheffield Shield and first class cricket for 14 seasons, which was just amazing, and had the wonderful opportunity to play 12 tests and 38 one-day games for Australia, which was a boyhood dream, an absolute boyhood dream. I'm now the president of the Randwick Petersham Cricket Club and have been for 26 years. I love cricket, and I'm happy to be here talking to Jack because you're watching the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast.
Now, Mike, that's the talking about yourself bit done. Let's get into this cricket discussion. I chose some topics to talk about and discuss with you. And the first one is Test cricket, because we've talked a lot about that when reflecting on your Test career. And wanted to get your thoughts on that. Being a former Test cricketer and now watching Test cricket in the modern era, how would you assess the current state of Test cricket now, and how do you see the future of Test cricket going forward?
Jack, I think Test cricket will always be there. I think one-day cricket might be under assault from T20, but T20 is such a big game now that I see it bleeding into Test cricket. And I only had a conversation with the great Len Pascoe not that long ago, and Len said to me, if we were playing Sheffield Shield cricket now and you bowled a maiden and I bowled a maiden and you bowled another maiden, in that fourth over, they're swinging at you. Where in our day, the opening batsman would try and see you off for that first hour, get some miles in your legs, try and tire you out, and know that if you could bat till lunchtime and bat a whole session, that you'd make hay in the afternoon. I think the influence of T20 is being seen in Test cricket, and they just want to slap the ball around. There's not too many players now that can bat time. Like Brian Lara could bat 2 days. I mean, you'd like to think that there's players around that can still do that, but the majority want to feel bat on ball. But I think Test cricket holds such a specific place in cricket that it'll never go. The thing that worries me is sometimes the games are over in 2 or 3 days. That's a worry. To have 2 Ashes tests and only went a couple of days and one went 3 days, I think last year, that's a real worry. And I know in Melbourne, a lot of the curators from around Australia and other people have been down to Melbourne in the last week and had a bit of a curators conference to say we can't have 12 millimetres of grass on the MCG or whatever it was. I mean, I wouldn't mind having a bowl on that now, Jack. I was watching it with me bad knees and me crook neck and everything. So we've got to get that balance right. And we've got to make sure that the games can go 5 days. And the old traditional is there's a bit first day, and second and third day it's great for batting. Fourth day, the spinners come into play, and on the fifth day the wicket's deteriorated and it's a little bit up and down, and the spinners are going to turn it, and the fast bowlers get a little bit of low bounce. That's the general consensus of how the game should be played. And unfortunately, a lot of times now you see that it's not played like that. But I don't think Test cricket's under assault. The thing that worries me, but is that the crowds just don't turn up to Test cricket anymore. I mean, when I went to the West Indies in 1991 on that tour, mate, the grounds were just chock-a-block watching the Test cricket. I mean, you could not get another person into the ground in the Caribbean. Now you watch them play any Test series, it's a sprinkling of people. There's people in the main stand area, but the following week there might be a T20 and it's chock-a-block because it's the quick sugar dose. The IPL is unbelievable. The money that's in the game is unbelievable. I mean, my son says, if you were playing nowadays, Dad, would you put your hand up for the IPL? Again, I'll throw both my hands up because $500,000 US is a shit contract now. And it's just so much money. Some of these guys are earning $2 or $3 million for 6 weeks of bowling 4 overs. Only 4 overs, Jack, in a game. I mean, it's crazy. So I'd like to think that the future of Test cricket is solid. they said last year with those 2 games that only went for 2 days, Cricket Australia lost like $20 million because of that, because of sponsors and ticket sales not being there. I think we're still pretty good here in Australia. We love our Test cricket and we turn up to watch. I think there'll be a few people come and support the Test series this year against New Zealand because they're our brothers from across the Tasman there, and we love playing them and they love playing us, and they're really going well at the moment. So I think that might be a really good series. But yeah, I hope it's got a long future, mate. I'd hate for some time in my lifetime for them to say no more Test cricket. I mean, I just wouldn't be able to cop that, not at all.
No, I don't think it would be worth watching cricket if that's the case, Mike.
No.
If Test cricket wasn't here, it's the soul, it's the identity of the sport. It's the old format that was originally created. And then you have a team like England trying to rip that up and all the conventions, and look what that happens. They've been drinking too much of the Bazball Kool-Aid.
Is dead. Well,
it is now.
Well, it is now. That's it. We sort of put the knife into it last year out here, and I think with the Kiwis beating them on their own dung heap, which is just to beat someone in their own home is just massive. And, of course, that's Baz McCullum's now gone. He's looking after the white ball stuff, which is more Bazballish. And Stephen Fleming's taking over the Test side. But that was a real crazy couple of years with that Bazball. It was really crazy. And to me, it was never going to work. I mean, you need to bat time, and you need to be able to say, as a bowler, you need to be able to give your captain 20 overs in the day, maybe 25 overs. You've got to commit to that. And I don't want to jump on Jofra Archer's back, but Jofra, sometimes I didn't think bowled his quota. And sometimes, like the first Test, he wasn't there. And I thought, he must be injured. Now, he was having a 2-week holiday in Barbados because he'd just played in the IPL. And that would have never happened in my time. Never would you have taken 2 weeks off to go to Barbados. And he's obviously got relatives and stuff there. But there was a Test match on, the Lord's Test, and he's not there. Where are you? He's contracted to the ECB. And Jofra, again, I don't want to jump on his back too much, but sometimes he doesn't look interested to me. He's playing around the world in these franchise cricket, but this is Test cricket, man. This is, to me, the ultimate. It's the test of everything you've got. It's the test of what you got up here. Are you resilient enough? Are you fit enough? Are you willing to get hit? What's the New Zealand batter that got 100 in the last Test?
Darryl Mitchell.
That's Test cricket to me. Got hit 25 times, gutsed it out on a wicket that was doing a little bit up and down, gets 100, gets his side over the line. To me, that's Test cricket.
Everyone criticised him, and he said, he's chewing up deliveries and New Zealand are not forcing it enough. But he didn't need to. They didn't need to. They were in a good position. You have time. People forget that sometimes.
Brilliant Test innings. Won them the game or contributed heavily to them winning the game. See, people who make those comments, Jack, I don't think they understand what Test cricket's all about. You got to time. You got to bowl time. It's a waiting game. Some of the Tests I played in, Alan Border and the senior players in the team would talk about, we'll do this and we'll do this, we'll do this, and that'll set the trap, and then we'll get the guy out. It might have taken half an hour or an hour or a session, but you just got to hang in there, where everybody now wants the quick sugar fix, and that's T20. And I'm not bagging T20. It's providing a lot of money and a lot of funds. But look, there's kids. I'm the president of my club, Randwick Petersham. There's young kids there that are 15, 16, 17, and they'll tell me, we don't want to play first-class cricket. We just want to play franchise cricket. In my day, it was want to play Test cricket and Shirl cricket. And if you played one-day cricket, well, that was this other game that we played with 50 overs in it. But it was 4-day cricket and 5-day cricket, because the game gets an opportunity to open up like a flower and blossom in front of you. You've got to play the conditions. The wicket changes. You've got to adapt to that. If you bat on one day, on day one, and then you go in and bat at the back end of day 3 and day 4, the conditions have changed, and you've got to adapt to that. T20 cricket, it's all over in a couple of hours. The wickets don't change too much in that time. And I get it. And it's really exciting. And, you know, I've been to plenty of T20 games. I actually did a bit of commentary last year on the T20 for SEN Radio. And it was fascinating to be there commentating. And I didn't realise I knew so much about T20 cricket until I got in the commentary. But to me, it's always going to be 4 or 5 day cricket, Jake. That's the real test of you and your teammates against another team that wants to take you on over 4 or 5 days.
The satisfaction in, you know, playing hard 5 days or 4 days and you get the win or you draw a match, you can't replicate that in any other format of cricket, only in Test cricket, because that's what you want to do.
People say to me about that Test match where Billy McDermott and I blocked out New Zealand in 87. One of the greatest games that I'd ever seen. Mate, I've met about 100,000 people that said they were at the game that day, and there definitely wasn't that many people there on the last day. But it was a draw. We drew the game after 5 days, but what an insane set of moments it was, and the atmosphere and the crowd cheering every ball that I blocked in that last over. They'd just go, yay! Because it was me, again, with a batting average of 5.6 or something like that, against the great Richard Hadley, who'd bowled 30-odd overs and taken 5 for him. And there were just so many things happening. And, you know, look, T20 cricket's great, but it just doesn't have that stigma to me, you know. But it does unearth. What about Vaibhav Suravanshi, the 15-year-old from India? It's unearthed him, and I'm really I just can't believe that kid's doing what he's doing at that age. I mean, that is just insane. But is he going to be able to translate that into some first-class cricket in India and then into the Test side? Because, mate, he just swings and hits the ball. Some of the things I saw him do in the IPL last season, like Kagisa Rabada was bowling in one of those games, and he was bowling at 150, and he just kept plonking him. He plonked Paddy Cummins out of the ground in one of the games. Like, these are the world's best quicks, and this kid's got no... it doesn't even affect him, and he's very emotionless after he does it. They go down and they clack bats and touch hands, and then he goes back and does it again. But how does he understand the game at that age? I mean, I'm thinking about when I was 15, I didn't understand the game at that age, and I know he's been prepared since he was a kid, but I hope he can translate that. And mate, if he bats a whole day in Test cricket, he'll get 500 on his own by the look of that stuff.
He probably will. Sort of got Sachin Tendulkar vibes about him, because that's how Sachin was. He debuted very early on in Test cricket, and look what he became. You know, and you bowled against him and you got him out, and you know how good he is. So
I played in the first Test in Brisbane in that 91-92 series, and this is how amazing Indian people are. Indian people still come up to me now because I knocked him over in the first innings. So I became the first bowler to bowl him out on Australian soil. And Indian people come up to me still now and they go, Mike Whitney, first bowler to take Sachin's wicket in Australia in a Test match. I go, it's crazy, but that's how much they love the game, mate. They are just drunk on the game of cricket, and it's like another religion in India. It's crazy.
Yes, yeah. You know, you talk about cricket tragics. They're on the top of the list there. They worship it like a god. Yeah, and that's great. It's fantastic to see, you know. It's good to see that passion and enthusiasm for the game.
Yeah.
And good to hear your thoughts on Test cricket there, Mike. Let's hope it continues for many years to come. Now, the last topic, Mike, which I think is very important to talk about, is grassroots club cricket, because that plays an integral role in producing international players in many sports, but also cricket. They all come from somewhere. They come from a club, and they belong to a community that wants them to do well, and everyone wants to, you know, have some fun, play some cricket or some other sport you want to do. And you know what it's like running a cricket club, obviously. You run with Petersham, you're the president there for so long. Keep doing it every year. You're like, yep, you know, put my hand up, volunteer, which is great. And you need people like yourself, passionate people to run cricket clubs, to, you know, encourage the next generation to come through. But how would you assess the current state of grassroots club cricket in Australia, Mike? And maybe some people may be listening who may be struggling a bit in terms of promoting their own club? What advice would you give to them in terms of going about that, from your experience, of course?
I can only talk about the New South Wales setup. I'm not sure what it's like in Victoria and, what the South Australian Cricket Association does for country cricket. But when I was coming into first grade and then playing first class cricket in the early 80s, country cricket was still really, really buoyant. Like there was really good country competitions going, different areas of New South Wales, and some were very famous for producing cricketers that come to Sydney and found a great club and then went on to play for New South Wales. I don't think that's the same now. I don't think there's as much attention given to country cricket, and it's almost left up to the local people to organise their own competition. And if a player wants to come to Sydney, instead of in the old days of people having scouts, like I know Randwick had a couple of people up the coast and some people out in country New South Wales, and they'd ring the Secretary of Randwick and say, we've got this young player, Fred Smith. He scored 1,000 runs in our first grade in the Dubbo competition, or the Broken Hill competition, or the Bathurst competition, or the Coffs Harbour competition, and we think he's good enough to play club cricket. They'd organise for him to come down. Our club would find accommodation and try and bet him in, find him a job, stuff like that. That happened a lot in grade cricket. I don't think it happens as much now. And if a country player wants to come down, he's got to come down under his own steam and try and find a job, and it's a little more difficult. In fact, that very first game we talked about up in Brisbane when I made my debut for New South Wales, Len Pascoe, John Dyson and myself, out of the 12 that were there, were the only 3 city players that played. Everybody else was from the country. And I don't think it's like that anymore. So I'd like to see Cricket New South Wales put a bit more effort into going out into the bush and supporting the associations. I was at a function last week with Nathan Lyon, and he's got a charity that raises money for the Smith family, and his brother Brendan and him organised this, so I went along as one of the guest speakers. And Nathan was saying in the town of Young, where he grew up and played his first cricket, he grew up in this town. It's called the cherry capital of New South Wales. This is where all the beautiful cherries come from. But Young now doesn't have a first grade cricket competition. And I looked at him when he told me, I thought, well, like, that's where he came from. And he's now the GOAT. So without the people that nurtured him there growing up as a kid and encouraging to bowl his offies, and he's not too shabby with the bat. He's got some great runs for Australia and New South Wales, but there's no first grade cricket competition there. And it seems to me that when people who have been involved in those associations finally give it away or pass away or whatever, there's nothing coming through underneath. People don't want to take on the responsibility of being the president or being the treasurer or being the secretary, because in the old days, that was such a big feature in these country towns. You had the cricket competition in the summer and the rugby league or the Aussie rules or the rugby union, whatever, in the winter. Now there's 100 different things that kids can play, or they get stuck on looking at this and they don't want to play sport. I think there needs to be more encouragement, and I can only speak again from Cricket New South Wales, to get more people out in the bush. And look, we've just started in the last few years. We've got an old players association called the Baggy Blues. And in the last few years, we've been going out, 5 or 10 of us, depending on who's available, and going to these country areas, running coaching clinics for the kids, having a dinner on a particular night. We all get up and speak and whatever, to try and encourage the cricket in those areas. And I think there needs to be more done. And not that I know what happens in the other states, but I would suspect that it's pretty much the same. So I think that needs to be looked at. I've just been re-elected, Jack, for my 26th term as the president of Randwick Petersham. And I got told on that night that that's the 4th longest serving president in the Sydney Cricket Association history. One guy did 35, one guy did 33, one guy did 30, and then there's me at 26. And I'm in a similar situation as the president, I've asked a number of guys, would they like to be the next president? And they just say, no, haven't got time, or not after you, because I know the mayor of Randwick and I know the mayor of the Inner West. I know all the local politicians, a couple of those guys I grew up with, and now they're in government. And I can ring them on the phone and ask a favour, and all our sponsors I know and stuff like that. But I can't do it forever, Jack. There comes a time where I've got to step aside and get some new blood in there. And I look at our committee at Randwick Petersham. One of the guys is 75 or 76, another one's 72. Then there's a group of us that are in our late 60s. We'll be 68 next year, 3 of us. It's hard to get people involved that want to get into the administration of cricket and keep the whole thing going. So it's a bit of a worry, and hopefully we can turn that round, but I definitely think it needs to be addressed, particularly country cricket.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's important as well, to get it to all parts of Australia cricket.
Absolutely.
And I suppose other sports as well. It's so important to, because you never know, you may unearth the next talent from a country area in Australia that could play for Australia.
Glenn McGrath was from Narromine outside Dubbo. Brett and Shane Lee were from a little place called Shell Harbour down the coast. They all got recognised because in those days, the brewery that was sponsoring New South Wales, Tooheys Brewery, used to have this Tooheys country cricket. And they'd take 6 players away, and 3 would go in one side and 3 would go in the other. The rest would be local players. And so many kids got found. Like, I played in a lot of those games, and I said to a number of blokes, mate, you should come down and play for Randwick, where I'm playing, and we'll see if we can get your game in Sydney. And Glenn McGrath is the classic example of that came down. He went to Sutherland Cricket Club and became one of the greats of all time. But come from this little town called Narromine in country New South Wales, and only because of Tooheys country cricket, he got noticed playing this particular game and got an invite down to Sydney. So that should happen more and more and more and more. Otherwise, you miss these players.
Yeah, definitely. And let's hope all associations, in Australia, the state bodies and all that stuff, really look to improve these areas of concern when it comes to grassroots and club cricket, because, number one, they help the community. And number two, encouraging people to take up cricket or love cricket. You don't have to be good at playing cricket. At least you're playing cricket. It's something.
That's it. Yeah. Doesn't matter what grade you're playing, as long as you're playing.
No, that's right. Now, Mike, we've reached the end of our long discussion today. I've enjoyed it immensely, but we've got one more thing to do, Mike. We've got another 6 balls to go. We've got to face out Richard Hadley to get through this. So I asked our listeners to send in some questions for you to answer to the best of your ability, of course, which no doubt you will in your way. So we've got our regular listener of the podcast, Jihan. He's a big fan of cricket. He's a big fan of Australian cricket. He won't mind me saying that. And he's also a big fan of, Australian cricket and cricket in general, as we all are. He's sent in 3 questions for you to answer, Mike. So we have to go through them one by one and get through the over. So here we go with the first one. He said, Mike, I wanted to ask you about the 1989 Ashes tour. You had a really strong season, got wickets against the West Indies, and looked a strong case to be selected. Can you take us back to that period? Were you expecting to be selected? And how did you find out you hadn't been picked? And what explanation, if any, were given? So your thoughts on that, Mike?
That's a really good question. I had a great season. I was the leading wicket taker in first-class cricket in Australia. I played 1 test, the 5th test against the West Indies at Adelaide. I took 7 in the first innings and 2 in the second. Craig McDermott and Merv Hughes didn't get a wicket in that game. We only took 14 wickets in that test match. 1 was a run out. Trevor Hons, a leg spinner, took 2. Tim May, an off spinner, took 2. And I took the other 9. And that was one of those moments for me where I just thought, wow, you can do this, mate. You can play at this level and you can get great players out. And the season was, I think we might have won the Shield. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I might be wrong there. But I had a great season. I was a leading wicket taker and absolutely wanted to go to England on that 89 tour. the 81 tour where I got pulled out of obscurity was great, but I was like a Johnny on the spot there, and I wanted to go to England on an Ashes tour and earn my spot and bowl well enough to be picked under my own steam. So everybody had written me into the squad, even Richie Benno in the local papers. He was writing for papers in Sydney here, and the general consensus in Sydney here is if Richie Benno wrote you into the squad, you were pretty much sure that you were going to get picked in that squad. And I was with my sister in the city, and I knew that the squad was going to be read out by Jim Maxwell, who you've had on the podcast, on the ABC radio at 3 p.m. that particular afternoon. And we were driving home with my sister in the car, and it was right on 3 p.m. We had the radio on, and we got onto the ABC. And then he read all the names out alphabetically, Alan Border captain, then alphabetically. And it got, he'd mentioned this bowler from Tasmania, whose name just eludes me now, but I will remember it.
Greg Campbell.
Yes, Greg Campbell. And I thought, oh, Cambo's made the squad, and got down to Steve Waugh at the end, and then no more names after that. And I would have been read out after Steve Waugh, being Whitney alphabetically. And my sister just looked at me. And then Jim Maxwell said, and the great surprise is that New South Wales left-arm pace bowler Mike Whitney has not made the squad. Oh, Jack, I was just devastated because I knew I'd done the work. But I was really, really devastated. So at the start of the next season, I sought out every single Australian selector. The chairman was Laurie Saul, and we played in Perth early doors in a Shield match. So I got the Colonel, his nickname was. So I went and saw the Colonel and he said, well, I picked you. Okay. So then we played Victoria down in Melbourne, and Jim Higgs was another selector. He told me he picked me as well. And then I sought out Bobby Simpson, who was the coach and selector. He told me he'd pick me as well. So that was 3 out of the 4 that said they'd pick me. So someone was telling me porky pies. And then I finally ran into the 4th selector, John Benno, Richie's younger brother, and John was a fabulous cricketer in his own right, who said that he didn't pick me and gave me the reasons. So I think, yeah, a couple of those other guys weren't telling the truth. That's the way it is. But it did nothing but make me a little bit more resolute to try and get back in the team. And I eventually got back in the team, and sort of between, 90, 91, 92, 93, in my early 30s were probably the best years that I had in international cricket, which was pretty crazy because I was an old man then. I'd been around a long time and the body was starting to fail, but I was really, really disappointed. My sister sometimes mentions that just the look on her face was shattered, but mate, I was very, very disappointed. Took me a long time to get over that. I didn't do much in that off season, except train and got fitter. And the crazy thing was I hadn't done a lot of after dinner speaking at that stage, but because I was the only sort of profile cricketer left in Australia, I kept getting these companies ringing me up, starting to say, can you come and speak at this function? And it was the start of a career that I've had sort of doing a fair bit of after dinner speaking, which is really crazy. And my mother, who passed away a few years ago at 92, always said this: one door will close and another one will open for you. And it opened the after dinner speaking door for me. And it's been very lucrative. And I've spoken at some amazing functions all around the world now, because as you would expect, even on this podcast, Jack, I'm not short of a story and don't mind a chat. But I was devastated, mate. I was devastated that I didn't go on that tour. And of course, Australia went over there, won the Ashes. It was the birth of Steve Waugh in Test cricket, and AB winning, and it was just a fantastic tour to be a part of. But sadly, not part of my history.
Yeah, that's just the way it is. You can't really control selection, really. That's out of your control. All you can do is just, perform to the best of your ability, and that's all you can do. So the second question is, Mike, from Jihan. He says, I heard you talking on your own podcast about the Bairstow stumping incident at Lord's in 2023, the abuse that followed in the long room, and in particular, the treatment of Usman Khawaja. Looking back, what was your take on the whole episode with the targeting of Australian players and Khawaja in particular? Do you think perhaps the old colonial mindset in English cricket was coming back from under the surface? And you knew Khawaja from his time coming through at Randwick Petersham. What was he like as a young cricketer and as a person? And what did you see in him as he developed?
Well, I first met Usman and David Warner as young players. They played for a local club around here called Coastal Cricket Club, and I was actually the patron of that club. And they scored all the runs and they took all the wickets as well at that time. Usman come to the Randwick Petersham Cricket Club as a 16-year-old. I think he played 2 games in second grade, and we just went, no, this kid's too good, mate. He's got to play first grade. I think even though he's been in Brisbane now for a long time, he still holds the record for the number of centuries in first grade at Randwick Petersham. I think he made 15 or 16 centuries, and we knew he just had the goods. So I have a very close, intimate relationship with Usman. He is a wonderful human being, wonderful player. I don't know, there was a 3 or 4 year period where he didn't get picked. I didn't get that at all. And some people have said to me, do you think it's because he was born in Pakistan and he's a Muslim? And I don't know, but I'd hate to think that. But he finally got into the side and then became one of the best opening batsmen. You know, his period opening the batting for Australia was fantastic. And with the irony of him and David Warner opening the batting together after I'd seen them play as kids was just a real moment. And now David plays for our club as well. He originally went to play for Eastern Suburbs, but come back to our club. But look, Johnny Bairstow had done that himself. There was footage of Johnny Bairstow doing exactly the same thing. That's what I thought was hilarious, that it was blown up so much. Jack, have you ever been in the long room at Lord's?
No, but it's something that I would like to do one day in my cricket life.
I went in there. I played a couple of games for the MCC in 1990 when I was playing in the Lancashire Leagues and got invited down there. And this one particular game, I just walked down into the long room, the main area there, and I sat on this seat. And I'm a player. I got my gear on, but just my rubbers and a shirt, and we're out there batting, and I'm not, we're just going to open the batting. I thought I'll just go and see what it's like, not to watch from the dressing room upstairs, to watch from the long room. And this guy came over and tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Whitney, that's Sir John Rutherford's seat." And you're not allowed to sit there. And there was only about 30 people in the long room. So there was plenty of seats. I mean, it wasn't really crowded, but this was Sir John's seat, and you're not allowed to sit on that seat, whether he's there or he's not there. So that's what it's like. And look, I've spoken to Usman about that. He was disgusted. He actually wouldn't tell me what they said. So I think some of the things that were said were incredibly racist towards him. The whole thing, and I only saw the footage, was just bizarre how they reacted. I mean, 2 of those guys, I think, have been barred for life, lost their MCC membership, never allowed into the ground at all. It was really, really, really ordinary. I think that the Lord's members and the MCC will always be ashamed of that. It was just one of those moments in cricket. I think the Australian players had talked about it, that Johnny did that, so let's just try and run him out. And poor Alex Carey got a gobful as well, and he's the loveliest. I've never met Alex Carey, but everybody that tells me he's the loveliest kid you've ever met. He's a great player, and he got a gobful as well. But, yeah, they targeted Usman, and Usman doesn't take a step back. And there was a bit of thing there where he said, like, what did you say then? And the bloke said something which I don't think was very nice. Or Usman wouldn't tell me. So it was a disgusting, disgraceful set of circumstances. And I think that they should all be very disappointed about how they acted that day, and the booing and carrying on that went on in the long room as the Australian team walked in. Absolutely disgraceful. You don't play cricket for those reasons, and you don't support cricket for those reasons. So it'll go down as one of the darkest moments for the long room at Lord's in the history of the game.
Yes, it certainly was. And certainly watching it at the time, even when I was sitting back watching that test match late at night, Mike, being an umpire myself as well as playing, I was like, as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, yeah, the ball's not dead. It's not over. Yeah, that's out. That's out.
He's out.
And people said, oh, but the umpire gave Cameron Green his cap back. And no, that doesn't matter. It's when the umpire deems that the over is completed and says over, then it validates that. But the ball was still alive. And it wasn't like Alex Carey stopped. You see that all the time when batters are running for buys, Mike. It's no different there. It's the same
100%.
thing.
100%.
And we had Paul Blocker Wilson on, who you know very well.
Yeah.
When we interviewed him, he talked about the spirit of cricket and about people using that when things don't go against them. And he thinks, well, spirit of cricket's all about being respectful, playing the game in the right spirit, all that stuff. But you don't use it for, stuff that's within the laws and use it against you if it doesn't go your way. So that sort of happens. The same with running out the non-striker as well. All these things in cricket that cause controversy. It's not a surprise in the game of cricket. There's always controversy.
Well, Jack, if we're playing England, I'm happy for the boys to try and get them out any way they can.
That's very true, Mike. Very true. Yeah. And the last question from Jihan, Mike, is you had a pretty unusual second career after cricket, moving into television and becoming known to a different audience. How did that come about? And did you ever imagine when you were playing Test cricket that you end up having a long career in TV? As the years went on, did it become as much a part of your identity as cricket? Now, we haven't really talked about the television side in this conversation until now, Mike. I sort of wanted to leave it until this question here, but that's Jihan's question for you. What's your answer?
No, I didn't think I'd go into television at all. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. When I was a young fella, I actually did an apprenticeship at Qantas as a ground engineer, an airframe mechanic. And I'd finished that and then left there to try and pursue a professional cricket career. And I didn't know whether I was going to reapply for a job back in the aircraft industry or what I was going to do. And I'd only been retired about 6 months, and I was working for a promotions and marketing company. And this guy walked into the office and said, I saw you speak at a function, and I'm going to make a show for the ABC called Great Ideas about Australian innovation and invention. And the guy that was going to host that show can't do it. And I think you're my man. And I went, mate, I'm working at this promotions and marketing company, and we had some motor races that we were trying to promote, and we were managing Michael Slater and Zoe Goss, who also played cricket for Australia. Had a couple of race drivers under our management and stuff like that. And I went, I don't think so, mate. He came in the next day and said, you're my man. Anyway, I asked the two blokes that I was working for, and they said, why don't you have a go? So I went and shot this show called Great Ideas for the ABC. We made 12 episodes. That was my first time in front of the camera. And a guy who was running Channel 7 in Sydney called Chris Chapman, I'd played first grade cricket against. He batted number 3 for the University of New South Wales and was a fine player, Chris Chapman. And when that went to air, that ABC show, he rang me and said, I've just seen you on that ABC show. Would you consider coming out and working for the 7 Network? And I went, oh, Chapo, I've never really thought about it. I just made that show, and it was a lot of fun for a few months. And anyway, I got in my car and I drove out to Epping, where Channel 7 was then, and into Chapo's office. And he said, we'd really love to employ you, and we'd like to employ you to do sport. And I said, I don't want to do sport. And I remember he looked at me really strangely. He said, why don't you want to do sport? And he had a coat rack in his office, and it had a bowler hat on the coat rack. And I grabbed the bowler hat and danced around his office with this bowler hat. Da, 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 da. He said, what are you doing? I said, I want to do entertainment. I said, every sportsman retires from sport, and if they go into the media, they do that sport or they do sport. I want to do entertainment. And he said, well, we've shot 10 episodes of this show called Sydney Weekender. And if you want to take over the hosting of that, you can learn how to be a host. by hosting this show called Sydney Weekender. I ended up doing Sydney Weekender for 27 years. That was the basis of my employment at Channel 7. But very quickly, I agreed. I agreed to start there at the insistence of Chris Chapman, which when I retired or gave Channel 7 away after 27 years, I rang Chapo the next day and said, thanks for the last 27 years, mate. It was just the best time in the history of the world. And he'd left 7 by then and moved into other areas. But very soon, shows like Who Dares Wins and Gladiators come along. And Who Dares Wins in particular, because Sydney Weekender was only state-based, so only shot and done in New South Wales. Who Dares Wins arrived, and that with my friend Tanya Zayeda, and we're still very good friends, Tanya and I. She was the co-host of the show, and it was right on the cutting edge of the start of reality TV back in the mid-90s. The term hadn't even been made up then. We got asked to go down to the Logies and nominated in the entertainment category until a few years later they come and they go, oh, that's reality TV. So I'm sorry for all the crap that's on TV now. We started a lot of that. But look, those shows were so exciting. No shows had ever been made like that. Even Gladiators I was the referee of the second, third and fourth series of Gladiators. A tennis player called John Alexander was the first ref, and the show was rating that highly that Wimbledon was on, and Channel 7 wanted to send him to Wimbledon to do the commentary. So they asked me to be the referee on Gladiators. That was crazy. That was filmed in Brisbane at the Boondall Entertainment Centre. 5,000 people, chock-a-block, with Gladiators going on the floor, 20 cameras, and just, and it was, a lot of it was experimental. So I think back about that and think I'm really glad that I was, early doors in all that sort of making of TV. It was groundbreaking stuff, and it was really a lot of fun to be a part of. But I used to get asked, Jack, a lot by people going like, how old are you? And I go, 35 or 36, 37, whatever it was. And they go, what did you do before TV then? I go, oh, played a bit of cricket. And they go, who for? I go, oh, well, my club Randwick and New South Wales and Australia. And they just look at you, but it made me realise that not everybody follows the cricket. But to back up my cricket career, the 13 or 14 seasons of first class cricket with a 28-year career in TV, and enjoyed absolutely every moment of it, because like I did with cricket, once I settled into cricket, I wanted to know about everything in the game. I wanted to know about everything in the game. I wanted to learn the game completely. I wanted to know what spin bowlers were doing and why they did that, and how they changed their grips, and why Clive Lloyd had 8 batting grips on his bat, and just all these sort of things. I wanted to know everything. After about 6 or 7 years of being in TV, I was like confident to be in front of the lens, in front of the camera. I wanted to know about edit, production, audio, sound, just everything. So I started sitting in the edit suite and learning how the shows were edited, how it was all laid, and how the sound was put in, and how everything was made. So I wanted to completely know, from the time it went into the camera to the time it got broadcast, what were the processes through that. And I learnt all that, and it made me a much better TV host, to understand what was the cameraman looking at, what did he want from me, and why has he got me standing in this spot, because of what's behind me or what was next to me, and he wanted me to walk 5 steps. So a lot of hosts, I don't think, go that far, but I wanted to actually get right into the whole process. And once you understand the process, it's just absolutely fascinating. And the process changed so much in the near on 30 years. I remember we recorded on these really big Betacam tapes at first, and by the time I left, they were using an SD card. So I went these big Betacam tapes, then smaller tapes, then little SD or little tapes, and then digital tapes, and then that got smaller, and then they were filming on SD cards that would just pop into the side of the camera. So it was a time of great exploration and everything moving ahead so quickly. Digital came, surround sound, HD, all this sort of stuff, high def. You know, it was just a really crazy time to be involved in TV. And I loved every moment of it. I had a really good time.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose it comes back to those sliding doors moments again, Mike. There you go. You know,
again, another call that I picked up this day and went, "G'day, Mike Whitney." And he said, "Whit, it's Chris Chapman from University of New South Wales." And I went, "Oh, hi, Chapo, how you going?" He's great friends with Jeff Lawson, who also played for Uni, and a lot of other guys. And they were a club in the eastern suburbs, and I knew a lot of those guys. Yeah, if I don't take that call, like the one that I took off Greg Geese in Fleetwood in 1981 to go down and play for Gloucester, my life's not the same. It's totally different. So there is those moments, those absolute moments in your life that sort of put you on this trail and this track. And those two phone calls were so important. They just changed the whole course of my life.
Yes, indeed. A lot of coincidences, a lot of sliding doors moments. And
yeah.
here you are. You wouldn't be here sitting with me chatting about cricket or television at all.
Exactly.
Or doing the other things that you did in your life. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jihan, for your questions there. I hope Mike answered them to the best of his ability, which he did in his own special way. Mike, we finally reached the end of our long discussion. I've enjoyed it immensely and learned so much from our chat today. As the umpire says, it's time for stumps. It's time, gentlemen. And we go back to the pavilion and have a nice twoies or something, or some sort of refreshment of some sort. We didn't talk about that commercial, but which you're well known for as well.
Yeah.
It's been enjoyable and it's been great, and I hope everyone watching and listening will feel the same as well. But Mike, we have to plug the pod, your own podcast. How's that? The podcast? We have to plug that. Yeah. So if people want to get in touch with that or with you or the team, where can they do that?
Yeah, I think we're on all of I'm not really across a lot of social media, Jack. I'm not on any social media, but the boys, I think we're on Spotify and we're on Apple Podcasts, and you can get us on YouTube and all that sort of stuff. But it's called How's That, the podcast. And the boys come up with that name and we just appeal, "How's that?" through the podcast about 20 times. And we've had a lot of guests on. We've published about 150 episodes now, which is great. Some of the big things we've done, we've been over to Las Vegas to look at the rugby league over there. We went over just on a whim in year one, and we were the only podcast there. Now there's a few podcasts that they take over. We've got media passes now, and being a rugby league tragic, to go to Las Vegas and watch the rugby league is just such a bizarre thing to do. And it's got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we started off with sports people. We've now had people like Richard Clapton, the musician, Andy Bickers, who is a gun saxophone player who just passed away a few weeks ago, sadly. But he played on all of Cold Chisel and all of the great Australian bands. So the guys that I'm on with love their sport, but they're musicians as well. And we've had a few ladies on there as well. So we're trying to sort of transition, not away from sport, but just open it up. And what I've realised, Jack, is, mate, you could pull the bloke off the street who's collecting your garbage and put him on the podcast, and he's got a story. Everybody has a story, and it's an amazing education, and I've learned so much about doing the podcast. We do it every Monday, and we have a ball doing that too. We had Steve Stumper Rickson on the podcast yesterday. Now, I've known Stumper since 1979, and I found out things about Steve yesterday that I didn't know. And he's a great friend of mine. We played a lot of cricket together. He was on that 81 tour in England where I got selected out of nowhere. And Stumper said things yesterday that I'd never heard him say. He had a great career, but also a wonderful coaching career. But it's just a lot of fun, Jack. Like, you're having fun, you get to learn people. And I think at the end of the day, no matter how high profile the person is, I've sat back and gone, well, he's basically just a normal bloke that was really good at what he did and is happy to tell the story. So, yeah, how's that?
Yes. Yes, it's a great podcast. I've listened to it. And we've also had one of your guests, or a couple of guests from your podcast on ours, Mike. Number one being Roberto Sandora Escobar. We had him on. People said
crazy, Roberto.
he's such a good guy, but he was absolutely on top form when we spoke to him. And he was on your pod. And people said to me, why are you interviewing him? It's a complete 180 from cricket. You deal with drug lords and all that stuff. And I was like, it's something different. Hey, it's
His story,
Monty Python. It's now for something completely different.
It's just amazing, his story. He was one of our first interviews on the podcast 3 years ago. Just crazy. I can't even remember how we got in touch with him. Andrew Dawsey on the podcast somehow found him, and his story is just bizarre. I mean, it's just bizarre. This week, I'll just let you in on this. When I was growing up, there was a very famous singer called John Paul Young. Love is in the Air, all those songs he wrote. My sister used to love him. We're driving up to his studio up about 2 hours north of Sydney, and we're going to do a podcast in his studio with John Paul Young on Thursday. So that'll be published soon as well. So I'll all be singing Love is in the Air, everywhere I look around. And to sit there with him, I've been a few times, to sit there with John Paul Young, who was such a feature in my youth in the music, is going to be insane. So I just love the fact that I get to meet all these sensational people and some old mates of mine and people that I didn't know, Jack. And I'm sure you feel the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with Roberto about his story and unpacking that. That was pretty full on. And we also interviewed Jenny Thompson as well, who traveled the world. And
absolutely. Giving away
her
cricket.
on your pod.
Amazing girl as well, mate, Jenny.
Yes, we had her on the pod a couple of years ago. Great person, and what she did for traveling around the world and all that stuff, playing cricket and all that. As you said, Mike, it's all about just, you and me today sitting back and having a chat about what we love, and that's cricket and other things. And you learn so much from people, irrespective of status or where they're from or whatever. And that's why.
Hours, Jack. Don't worry about that. With all the stories and talking to people, I'd imagine we've been going for a couple of hours now, and there's still a lot of stuff we haven't spoken about. But
we'll probably need you back on for another part 2, Mike, because there was so much we didn't talk about with the television stuff and all that stuff. But we got through it eventually, and it's been a wonderful discussion as always. Before we go, remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Also, the podcast is available on Anchor, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. Once again, thank you, Mike, for joining me today for today's cricket discussion. I hope all of you watching or listening to this cricket discussion with Mike learned a lot more about Mike and his cricketing journey. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.
Good on you, Jack. Thanks for having me on Dibbly Dobbly, mate. It's been a pleasure.